The Starweaver hung motionless in the cold darkness of space, its hull scarred and blackened from the explosion that had torn through its engine room 3 days ago. Inside the ship, Captain Zenth pressed his scaled hands against the control panel and watched the power levels drop steadily on his screen. The life support systems were failing, and he knew they had maybe 2 days left before the air ran out completely. "Captain, should I keep sending the distress signal?" asked Communications Officer Vex from her station across the bridge. Her voice was weak, and Zenth could see the exhaustion in her large yellow eyes. Like all Zelathi, she had tough reptilian skin that could handle temperature changes, but even their hardy species needed oxygen to survive. "Yes, keep broadcasting," Zenth replied, though he knew it was probably useless. The Zelathi High Command had made their decision clear when they ordered all ships to abandon the Starweaver after the quantum drive experiment went wrong. The official report would say the entire crew died in an accident. No one would come looking. For them, the Starweaver had been testing new technology that could make ships travel faster than ever before. The quantum drive was supposed to change everything, allowing their people to explore distant parts of the galaxy in weeks instead of years. But something had gone terribly wrong during the test. The drive had exploded, taking out their main engines and most of their power systems. When Zenth had requested immediate rescue, the response from command had been swift and brutal. The experiment was classified as a failure, and the ship was declared lost with all hands. Any rescue attempt would reveal the secret project to their enemies. The 12 crew members aboard the Starweaver were considered acceptable losses for the greater good of the Zelathi Empire. "We could try reducing power to non-essential systems," suggested Engineer Krell, his voice barely above a whisper. The young Zelathi had been working non-stop to keep their life support running, but there was only so much he could do with the damaged equipment. Zenth nodded and watched as Krell shut down the lights in most sections of the ship. The bridge grew dimmer, lit only by the glow of their control panels. Through the main viewing screen, he could see the swirling colors of the Kepler Nebula surrounding them. The gas clouds were beautiful, but they also made it impossible for most sensors to detect their ship. Even if someone wanted to find them, the nebula would hide their location. "How many other ships have we detected in this area?" Zenth asked, though he already knew the answer. "None, Captain," Vex replied. "This sector is marked as a dead zone on most star charts. No trade routes pass through here, and the nebula makes navigation dangerous for most species." Zenth stood up from his command chair and walked to the viewing screen. His reflection stared back at him, a tall Zelathi with dark green scales and tired eyes. He had served in the military for 15 years and had always believed that the Empire cared for its soldiers. The abandonment of his crew had shattered that belief completely. Behind him, he could hear the quiet conversations of his remaining crew members. Medical Officer Drac was treating the injured in the ship's small medical bay. 3 crew members had been hurt badly in the explosion, and without proper medical equipment, Drac was fighting to keep them alive with basic supplies. The worst part was the silence from space around them. Their distress signal went out on all known frequencies, calling for help in the universal trade language that most civilized species understood. But space remained empty and quiet, with no responses to their desperate calls. "Captain," Vex called out, "I'm picking up something on long-range sensors." Zenth turned quickly, hope rising in his chest. "Is it a ship?" "I think so, but it's very far away. The signature is strange, not like any Zelathi vessel I've seen before." Vex adjusted her controls, trying to get a clearer reading. "Wait, it's moving in our direction." "Could be a patrol ship," Krell suggested, but his tone was doubtful. "Maybe. Command changed their minds about leaving us here." Zenth shook his head. He knew better than to hope for a rescue from his own people. The High Command had made their choice, and they would stick to it no matter what. If a ship was coming, it belonged to someone else entirely. "Keep monitoring the contact," he ordered, "and maintain our distress signal. If it's not one of ours, maybe they'll be willing to help." Hours passed slowly as the unknown ship grew closer. The Starweaver's sensors were damaged, so they could only track the vessel when it was relatively near. Vex worked constantly at her station, trying to get better readings on their potential rescuer. "Captain, I'm getting more detailed scans now," she reported. "The ship is definitely not Zealothi design. It's smaller than our heavy cruisers, but appears to be heavily armed. The hull design is completely unfamiliar. Any response to our distress calls?" "Not yet, but they're definitely coming this way. Their course will bring them within visual range in about 6 hours." Zenth felt a mixture of hope and fear. An unknown alien ship could mean rescue, but it could also mean death. Many species in this part of the galaxy were not friendly to strangers, and some were openly hostile. The Starweaver had no weapons left after the explosion, so they would be completely helpless if the approaching ship had bad intentions. "Gather all crew members who can move," Zenth ordered. "I want everyone on the bridge when that ship arrives. If this is our only chance for rescue, we'll face it together." One by one, the surviving members of the Starweaver's crew made their way to the bridge. Some were injured and had to lean on others for support. Medical Officer Drac had done his best to treat everyone, but their supplies were running low, and several crew members were in serious condition. As they waited, Zenth thought about his family back on the Zealothi homeworld. His mate, Syrah, and their 2 young children believed he was on a routine research mission. They had no idea that their government had abandoned him and his crew to die in the depths of space. If the approaching ship couldn't or wouldn't help them, his family would never know what really happened to him. "Contact is now visible on our screens," Vex announced. The main viewing screen switched to show the approaching vessel. It was unlike anything any of them had ever seen before. The ship had a sleek, angular design with what looked like heavy armor plating along its hull. Weapon systems were clearly visible, but the overall design suggested both power and efficiency. "Still no response to our distress calls?" Zenth asked. "Nothing yet, Captain, but they're definitely scanning us. I can detect their sensor beams." The unknown ship moved closer, and soon it was near enough that they could see details of its construction. Strange markings covered the hull, symbols that looked like they might be writing in an alien language. The ship was clearly built for war, but it moved with careful precision, suggesting that its crew was skilled and disciplined. "Captain," Vex said suddenly, her voice filled with surprise, "I'm receiving a transmission. They're trying to communicate with us." "Put it through," Zenth ordered, standing straighter despite his exhaustion. The bridge speakers crackled with static, and then a voice came through, speaking in the universal trade language, but with an accent none of them had heard before. "Unknown vessel, this is Lieutenant Commander Jake Peterson of the U.E.S. Valiant. We have received your distress signal. What is your status?" For the first time in days, Zenth allowed himself to feel real hope. Someone had heard their call for help, and they were willing to talk. He stepped forward to the communications panel and spoke clearly into the transmitter. "U.E.S. Valiant, this is Captain Zenth of the Zealothi research vessel Starweaver. We have suffered critical system failures and require immediate assistance. Our life support is failing, and we have injured crew members who need medical attention." There was a brief pause, and then the alien voice responded with words that Zenth would remember for the rest of his life. "Starweaver, we understand your situation. The Valiant is moving to assist. Hold your position and prepare to receive aid." The U.S. Valiant moved closer to the damaged Zealothi ship, its powerful engines glowing blue in the darkness of space. On the bridge of the human warship, Captain Rick Mason studied the alien vessel through his viewing screen. The Starweaver looked badly damaged, with scorch marks across its hull and several sections that appeared to be completely dark. "What do we know about this species?" Mason asked his first officer, Lieutenant Commander Jake Peterson. The captain was a tall man with gray hair and steady brown eyes. He had been commanding ships for 12 years and had seen many strange things in deep space, but this was his first encounter with the Zelathi. "Very little, sir," Peterson replied, checking his datapad. "Our computers have no records of them in our databases. The universal translator is working, so we can communicate, but everything else about them is unknown." Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kate Sullivan stepped forward from her station. She was a woman in her 30s, with short blonde hair and green eyes that showed both intelligence and compassion. "Captain, from their distress call, it sounds like they have injured crew members. I should prepare the medical bay in case we need to treat alien patients." "Good thinking, Doctor," Mason nodded. "What's our tactical situation, Peterson?" "The alien ship appears to be completely disabled. No weapon signatures, no engine activity, and their power output is very low. If this is some kind of trap, it's a very convincing one." Mason considered their options. The standing orders for first contact situations were clear. Proceed with extreme caution and avoid any actions that could be seen as hostile. But the desperation in the alien captain's voice had been real, and Mason had never been the type of officer to ignore someone in need. "Take us to within transporter range," he ordered, "and prepare a boarding party. I want to see their situation for myself before we commit to any major assistance." "Sir, regulations say we should report this contact to command before taking any action," Peterson reminded him. "By the time we get a response from Earth, those aliens could be dead," Mason replied firmly. "We'll follow first contact protocols, but we're not going to let people die while we wait for permission to help them." 20 minutes later, Mason stood in the Valiant's transporter room with Dr. Sullivan and Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez. The engineer was a stocky man with dark hair and experienced hands that could fix almost anything. If the alien ship needed repairs, Rodriguez was the best person to assess what could be done. "Remember, we don't know anything about their biology or their culture," Mason told his team. "Stay alert, but don't do anything that could be seen as threatening. Our goal is to help them, not start an interstellar war." The transporter activated, and the 3 humans materialized aboard the Starweaver. The first thing Mason noticed was how cold the ship felt. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, and he could hear the labored sound of failing life support systems. Captain Zenth was waiting for them in what appeared to be the ship's main corridor. Mason had seen many alien species during his career, but the Zelathi were impressive. Zenth stood nearly 7 feet tall, with dark green scales covering his body and intelligent yellow eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the human visitors. "Captain Mason," Zenth said in the trade language, his voice deep and formal. "I am Captain Zenth of the Starweaver. Thank you for responding to our distress call." "Captain Zenth," Mason replied, extending his hand in the universal gesture of greeting. "We're here to help. What's your situation?" Zenth looked at the offered hand for a moment, then reached out with his own scaled hand to shake it. The gesture seemed to surprise him, as if he wasn't used to such informal contact between commanders. "Our quantum drive experiment failed catastrophically 3 days ago," Zenth explained as he led them through the ship. "The explosion destroyed our main engines and damaged most of our critical systems. We have 12 crew members, and 3 are seriously injured." Dr. Sullivan stepped forward. "Captain, I'm Dr. Sullivan, the Valiant's Chief Medical Officer. May I examine your injured crew members? I don't know anything about Zelathi biology, but I might be able to help." "You would do that?" Zenth asked, And Mason could hear the surprise. In his voice, "You would risk treating an unknown species?" "That's what doctors do," Sullivan replied simply. "We help whoever needs it." As they moved through the ship, Rodriguez examined the damaged systems with professional interest. The Zealoty. Technology was different from human designs, but the basic principles seemed similar. "Captain, their life support is failing, but I think we can stabilize it temporarily. The real problem is their power core. It's been damaged and is slowly losing containment." "How long do they have?" Mason asked. "Maybe 18 hours before." "Total system failure," Rodriguez replied grimly. "After that, the ship becomes a tomb." They reached the Star Weaver's medical bay, where Dr. Sullivan got her first look at injured Zealoty. Medical Officer Drac, a smaller Zealoty with lighter green scales, was working desperately to keep his patients alive with limited supplies. "Dr. Drac," Zenth said, "this is Dr. Sullivan from the human ship. She has offered to help treat our wounded." Drac looked at the human doctor with obvious skepticism. "You know nothing about our physiology." "How can you help?" "By learning," Sullivan replied. She approached one of the injured Zealoty carefully, her scanner already running. "Your people breathe oxygen like we do, which means your blood probably carries it the same way. The basic principles of trauma medicine should apply, even if the details are different." For the next hour, the two doctors worked together, with Drac teaching Sullivan about Zealoty biology while she shared her more advanced medical techniques. Mason watched as his chief medical officer adapted quickly to the differences in alien anatomy, her scanner helping her understand how their organs functioned. Meanwhile, Rodriguez had begun working on the ship's failing systems. Several Zealoty engineers gathered around him as he explained how human technology might be adapted to work with their equipment. "Your power distribution system is more efficient than ours," Rodriguez told Engineer Krell. "But you're missing backup safety protocols. When your main system failed, there was nothing to prevent cascade failures throughout the ship." "We never considered such redundancy necessary," Krell admitted. "Our ships rarely operate alone, so emergency assistance is usually available quickly." "Not out here," Rodriguez said, gesturing toward the nebula visible through a nearby porthole. "In deep space, you have to be ready to handle any emergency by yourself." Captain Zenth pulled Mason aside as their subordinates worked. "Captain Mason, I must tell you something. My government did not abandon us by accident. They chose to leave. U.S. here to die." Mason studied the alien captain's face, seeing pain and anger in his expression. Why would they do that? The quantum drive project was secret. When it failed, the High Command decided that losing one ship and 12 crew members was better than admitting the project existed. They declared us officially dead and ordered all ships to avoid this sector. "That's why you seemed so surprised when we offered to help," Mason realized. "In our experience, powerful species either ignore the weak or use them for their own benefit. We have never encountered anyone who would risk their own safety to help strangers without expecting something in return." Mason considered this information carefully. The political situation was more complicated than he had realized, but it didn't change his decision to help. "Captain Zenth, what happens if we save your ship and crew? Will your government still consider you dead? Probably. Or they might try to eliminate us permanently, to prevent us from revealing the truth about their abandonment. Then maybe it's time you found some new friends," Mason said. "The Human Federation has always been interested in meeting peaceful species. If your government doesn't want you, perhaps ours would be willing to offer you sanctuary." Zenth's eyes widened. "You would do that? Offer protection to fugitives from our own government?" "We'd offer protection to good people who were abandoned by a corrupt system," Mason corrected. "There's a difference." Dr. Sullivan approached them, her face showing both exhaustion and satisfaction. "Captain, I've stabilized the most seriously injured patient." Dr. Drack is a skilled physician. His people are lucky to have him. But they're going to need more supplies and equipment than their ship can provide. What do you recommend? Mason asked. Transfer the most critical patients to our medical bay. I can treat them properly there, and Dr. Drack can learn some of our techniques at the same time. And the ship? Mason asked Rodriguez. I can get their life support stable and their basic systems running, but they're going to need major repairs before this ship is space-worthy again. The kind of repairs that take weeks in a proper shipyard. Mason made his decision. Dr. Sullivan, begin transferring the injured to the Valiant. Rodriguez, do what you can to stabilize their ship. Captain Zenth, I'm formally inviting you and your crew to accept temporary sanctuary aboard the UES Valiant while we figure out a permanent solution to your situation. Captain Mason, Zenth said, his voice filled with emotion, in 3 days you have shown us more kindness than our own. Government showed us in 15 years of loyal service. Whatever the future holds, the crew of the Starweaver will not forget this debt. The medical bay aboard the UES Valiant had never been busier. Dr. Kate Sullivan moved between 3 different treatment areas, each one holding a critically injured Zealothi crew member. The alien patients were larger than humans, requiring specially adjusted equipment and careful monitoring as their bodies responded to unfamiliar medical treatments. Dr. Sullivan, the patient in Bay 2 is showing improved breathing patterns, reported Dr. Drack, the Zealothi medical officer, who had been working alongside the human doctor for the past 6 hours. His yellow eyes showed exhaustion, but also amazement at the advanced medical equipment available on the human ship. Good, Sullivan replied, checking her scanner readings. The internal bleeding has stopped, and his vital signs are stabilizing. Your people heal faster than I expected. Once we got the right treatment started. In the corner of the medical bay, Communications Officer Vex sat on an examination table while a medical technician treated the burns on her arms. She had been hurt trying to manually restart their life support systems when the automated controls failed. The human medic worked carefully, applying healing gel that would help her scales regrow properly. Does it hurt? The technician asked, genuinely concerned about causing pain to an alien patient. Less than it did before, Vex replied in her improving English. She had been listening to the humans speak and was starting to understand their language without the universal translator. Your medicine is very good, much better than what we had on our ship. Throughout the Valiant, similar scenes were playing out as the human crew integrated their Zealothi guests. In the engineering section, Tony Rodriguez worked with engineer Krell and 2 other Zealothi technicians to create hybrid repair systems that could work with both human and alien technology. Your people build things to last, Rodriguez commented as he examined a piece of Zealothi equipment. This power converter is still working even after taking a direct hit from your quantum drive explosion. Human equipment would have been completely destroyed. But your systems are much more flexible, Krell replied, watching Rodriguez connect human components to Zealothi circuits. You plan for things to break and build in ways to fix them, or work around the damage. We assume everything will work perfectly forever. Nothing works perfectly forever, Rodriguez said with a laugh. That's the first thing you learn as an engineer. If something can break, it will break, usually at the worst possible time. The work was slow and dangerous. Every connection between human and Zealothi technology had to be tested carefully to make sure the different power systems wouldn't overload each other. But gradually, the Starweaver's critical systems began to stabilize. On the bridge of the Valiant, Captain Rick Mason reviewed the progress reports from his department heads. The rescue operation was going better than expected, but he knew they were far from finished. The Zealothi ship was still barely functional, and his own vessel was using up supplies at an alarming rate. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Jake Peterson, called from his station. I'm picking up some unusual readings from our long-range sensors. There might be ships moving in our direction, but the nebula is making it hard to get clear scans. Mason frowned. They were in an area that most species avoided, so any ship traffic was suspicious. How many contacts? I can't be sure. The sensor. Ghosts from the nebula are interfering with our readings. Could be as few as 3 ships, or as many as 8. Time to intercept? If they're traveling at normal cruiser speed, about 18 hours. But Captain, if they're using military-grade engines, they could be here much sooner. Mason considered the implications. Captain Zenth had warned him that the Zelethi government might send ships to eliminate any witnesses to their abandonment of the Starweaver. If that was true, then both crews were in serious danger. Peterson, I want continuous monitoring of those contacts. If they change course or speed, I need to know immediately. Mason activated his communication system. All department heads to the bridge for an emergency briefing. 10 minutes later, the bridge was crowded with both human and Zelethi officers. Captain Zenth stood beside Mason, his tall frame making the human captain look small by comparison. The alien commander's expression was grim as he listened to Peterson's report about the approaching ships. Captain Mason, Zenth said when the briefing finished, I believe those are Zelethi military vessels. The High Command has decided that leaving us to die was not enough. They want to make sure we cannot tell anyone about their betrayal. How? Can you be sure? Dr. Sullivan asked. She had left her patients in the care of Dr. Drack so she could attend the meeting. Because I know how they think, Zenth replied bitterly. The existence of your ship changes everything. Before, they could simply let us die and blame it on an accident. But now there are witnesses from another species. They cannot allow that information to reach your government. So they'll try to destroy both ships, Mason concluded. Yes, and they will report that an alien vessel attacked the Starweaver and that they arrived too late to save anyone. The bridge fell silent as everyone considered the situation. The Valiant was a powerful warship, but if the approaching fleet was as large as the sensors suggested, they would be badly outnumbered. Captain Mason, Rodriguez spoke up from his position near the engineering station. The Starweaver is still not ready for combat or high-speed travel. If we have to run, they won't be able to keep up. We're not abandoning them, Mason said firmly. That's what got us into this situation in the first place. Sir, Peterson said carefully, we have to consider the safety of our own crew. If those are military ships, we might not be able to protect anyone. Mason stood up and walked to the main viewing screen, which showed the damaged Zelethi research vessel floating nearby. His crew had worked for hours to save those aliens, sharing their supplies and risking their lives to help complete strangers. The idea of abandoning them now went against everything he believed in. Captain Zenth, Mason said, turning back to face the alien commander, what kind of weapons do Zelethi military ships carry? Heavy plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and defensive shields, Zenth replied. Their ships are built for overwhelming firepower rather than maneuverability. In a straight fight, even one of their cruisers would be a serious threat to your vessel. But you know their tactics and their weaknesses, Mason pointed out. Yes, I do. But knowledge alone will not overcome such superior numbers. Mason looked around the bridge at his mixed crew of humans and aliens. In just one day, these two species had learned to work together, sharing knowledge and risking their lives for each other. The thought of letting the Zelethi government destroy that cooperation filled him with anger. Dr. Sullivan, how soon can the injured Zelethi be moved if necessary? He asked. The most critical patient needs at least 12 more hours of treatment. Moving him before then could kill him. Rodriguez, what's the status on the Starweaver's engines? I can get them running, but not at full power. Maybe 60% capacity at best, and that's pushing the damaged systems to their limits. Mason made his decision. We're not running, and we're not abandoning anyone. If the Zealothi military wants a fight, we'll give them one, but we're going to be smart about it. Captain, Peterson said, what do you have in mind? We use the nebula to our advantage. Their sensors will have the same problems ours do in this environment. We can use hit-and-run tactics, striking at individual ships and disappearing back into the gas clouds before they can coordinate a response. That's dangerous, Zenth warned. The nebula contains pockets of unstable gas that can damage ships or interfere with life support systems. Then we'll have to be careful, Mason replied. Do you have detailed charts of this area? Yes, the Starweaver was mapping the nebula as part of our research mission. Good. We'll use your knowledge of the local conditions and our ship's maneuverability to even the odds. Engineer Krell stepped forward. Captain Mason, there might be another option. The quantum drive research we were conducting, if we could. Adapt some of that technology to your ship's engines. It might give you a significant speed advantage. Is that possible? Rodriguez asked, his interest immediately caught by the technical challenge. The theory's sound, Krell replied. Your engines are more robust than ours, so they might be able to handle the stress better. But it would be extremely dangerous. The quantum field could destabilize and destroy both ships. How long would it take to make the modifications? Mason asked. Working together, perhaps 10 hours. But Captain, I must warn you, this technology killed my crewmates and destroyed our ship. Using it in battle would be taking an enormous risk. Mason looked around the bridge again. His crew was tired from the rescue efforts, and they were about to face overwhelming odds against an enemy that wanted to kill everyone aboard both ships. But he could see determination in the faces of both humans and Zealothi. We'll prepare for battle, he announced. Peterson, I want all weapon systems checked and ready. Sullivan, do everything you can to stabilize the injured. Rodriguez and Krell, start working on those engine modifications. We have about 16 hours before those ships arrive, and I intend to use every minute of it. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Captain Zenth approached Mason privately. Captain, why are you doing this? The bridge of the U.E.'s Valiant was tense with anticipation as the Zealothi fleet approached through the swirling gas clouds of the Kepler Nebula. Captain Rick Mason stood at his command chair, watching the tactical display as 6 contacts slowly became clear on their sensors. Beside him, Captain Zenth studied the readouts with growing concern. I can confirm those are military vessels, Zenth said grimly. 3 heavy cruisers and 3 destroyers. They're running in attack formation, which means they expect to find resistance. How do they compare to our capabilities? Asked Lieutenant Commander Jake Peterson from his tactical station. Each of their cruisers is roughly equal to your ship in firepower, Zenth replied. The destroyers are smaller, but fast and heavily armed. Together, they have enough weapons to destroy both our vessels several times over. In the engineering section, Tony Rodriguez and Engineer Krell were making final adjustments to the quantum drive modifications they had been working on for the past 14 hours. The human engineer wiped sweat from his forehead as he connected the last power coupling. Are you sure this is going to work? Rodriguez asked for the 3rd time. The calculations are correct, Krell replied, though his own voice showed uncertainty. But we've never tested quantum enhancement on a human ship before. Your engines might handle the stress better than ours did, or they might explode even more dramatically. Well, that's reassuring, Rodriguez muttered. He activated his communicator. Bridge, this is engineering. The quantum modifications are complete, but I strongly recommend we test them before we need them in combat. Understood, Mason's voice came back. We'll try a quick test run before the fleet gets here. On the bridge, Mason turned to his helmsman. Lieutenant Foster, take us away from the Starweaver at quarter impulse. Let's see what these modifications can do. The Valiant moved slowly away from the damaged Zealoty ship, putting some distance between them before attempting the dangerous test. Mason watched the engine readouts carefully as they reached minimum safe distance. Engineering, we're ready for your test. Acknowledged, Captain. Activating quantum enhancement in 3.2. The ship suddenly lurched forward with incredible speed. The stars on the view screen became streaks of light as the Valiant shot through space faster than it had ever moved before. On the bridge, everyone grabbed onto their stations as the inertial dampeners struggled to compensate for the sudden acceleration. Cut the enhancement, Mason ordered. The ship immediately returned to normal speed, and the crew slowly released their grips on their stations. The test had lasted only 5 seconds, but they had covered more distance than normally possible in several minutes. Rodriguez, report, Mason called. All systems are stable, Captain. The quantum field held together, and our engines handled the stress better than expected. But I'm reading some concerning power fluctuations. We can use this modification, but not for extended periods. How long can we maintain quantum enhancement? Maybe 30 seconds at a time, with at least 5 minutes between uses to let the systems cool down. Mason nodded. It wasn't much, but it might be enough to give them an edge in the coming battle. Take us back to the Starweaver. It's time to set up our defenses. As the Valiant returned to its position near the research vessel, Dr. Kate Sullivan was making her final preparations. In the medical bay, the most seriously injured Zealoty patient was stable, but still critical. Moving him during a battle could kill him, but leaving him unprotected was equally dangerous. Dr. Drack, she said to the Zealoty medical officer, I want you to take the other patients to the emergency shelter on Deck 7. It's the most protected area of the ship. What about Healer Thex? Drack asked, indicating their critical patient. He stays here with me. I can't move him safely, so we'll have to protect him here. Drack looked at the human doctor with respect. You are risking your life for one of my people. He's under my care now, Sullivan replied simply. That makes him my responsibility. Back on the bridge, the approaching Zealoty fleet was now close enough for detailed scans. Captain Zenth studied the formation and weapon signatures with the eye of an experienced military officer. They're being led by Admiral Corex, he announced. I served under him for 2 years. He's ruthless and efficient, but he follows predictable tactics. He'll try to surround us and overwhelm us with concentrated firepower. Any weaknesses we can exploit? Mason asked. He relies heavily on coordinated attacks. If we can break up his formation and force his ships to fight individually, we might have a chance. The communication system suddenly crackled to life. Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Corex of the Zealoty Imperial Fleet. You are ordered to surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Mason looked at Zenth, who shook his head. If we surrender, they'll execute everyone aboard both ships and claim we died in an accident. Mason activated the communication system. Admiral Corex, this is Captain Rick Mason of the UES Valiant. We are conducting a legitimate rescue operation in neutral space. Your threats are unprovoked and unwelcome. Captain Mason, you are harboring fugitives from Zealoty justice. Surrender now or face the consequences. The only fugitives here are people abandoned by their own government to die in space, Mason replied. We don't negotiate with people who abandon their own soldiers. There was a pause, and Corex's voice returned, cold and angry. You have made your choice, human. Your interference in Zealoty affairs ends now. The 6 Zealoty ships moved into attack formation, spreading out to surround the Valiant and the Starweaver. Mason watched their positions carefully, noting how they positioned themselves exactly as Zenth had predicted. All hands battle stations, Mason announced throughout. The ship, this is not a drill. Prepare for combat. The bridge lights dimmed to battle lighting, and tactical displays showed the positions of enemy ships. Peterson worked at his weapons station, charging the Valiant's plasma cannons and loading torpedo tubes. Captain, communications officer. Vex spoke up from her temporary station on the bridge. I'm receiving a transmission from the Starweaver. Captain Jenks says his ship is ready to fight alongside you. Tell him to stay behind us and use his remaining weapons to support our attacks, Mason ordered. The first shots came from the Zealoty destroyers, bright beams of energy that lit up space as they struck the Valiant's shields. The ship shook from the impact, but the shields held. Return fire, Mason commanded. The Valiant's weapons responded immediately, sending plasma bolts and torpedoes toward the nearest destroyer. The enemy ship's shields flared as the weapons struck home, and Peterson reported successful hits on their forward weapons array. One destroyer damaged, he announced. But here come the cruisers. The three heavy cruisers opened fire together, their combined weapons creating a devastating barrage that hammered the Valiant's shields. Warning lights flashed on the bridge as the shield strength dropped rapidly. Shields down to 60%, Peterson reported. Use the quantum enhancement, Mason ordered. Get us out of their firing pattern. Activating quantum drive, Rodriguez's voice came over the communicator. The Valiant suddenly shot forward at incredible speed, moving so fast that the Zealoty weapons couldn't track them. In seconds, they had moved behind the enemy formation, putting the damaged Starweaver between them and most of the attacking ships. Fire on the trailing cruiser, Mason commanded. The Valiant's weapons struck the Zealoty cruiser from behind, where its shields were weakest. The enemy ship's rear shields collapsed, and several direct hits damaged its engine systems. One cruiser disabled, Peterson reported with satisfaction. But the victory was short-lived. The other Zealoty ships quickly adjusted their positions, and Admiral Corex's voice came over the communications again. Impressive, Captain Mason, but you cannot run forever. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. Counteroffer, Mason replied. Withdraw your ships, and we won't embarrass you further. The battle continued for another 20 minutes, with the Valiant using its quantum-enhanced speed to strike at individual ships and disappear before they could coordinate their response. But the constant maneuvering was taking its toll on both the ship and crew. Captain, Rodriguez called from engineering, the quantum system is overheating. We can maybe use it 2 more times before it shuts down completely. Shields down to 20%, Peterson added. We can't take much more punishment. Mason looked at the tactical display. They had disabled 2 enemy ships, but 4 were still fighting, and the Valiant was badly damaged. In the medical bay, Dr. Sullivan was treating wounded crew members, while protecting her critical Zealoty patient. Captain Zenth, Mason said, it's time for that broadcast you mentioned. If we're going down, let's make sure the truth goes with us. Zenth nodded and moved to the communication station. Admiral Corex, this is Captain Zenth of the Starweaver. I have something to tell your crews. Zenth? Corex's voice showed surprise. You were reported dead. Yes, reported dead by the same high command that ordered you to abandon us, Zenth replied. Attention all Zealoty vessels. Your government left 12 loyal soldiers to die in space to cover up a failed experiment. Now they want to murder us and our human rescuers to hide their shame. The silence in space stretched for long minutes as the Zealoty fleet held their positions. On the bridge of the U.E.'s Valiant, Captain Rick Mason watched the tactical display and waited to see if Captain Zenth's words had any effect on the attacking ships. The alien commander stood beside the communication station, his yellow eyes fixed on the screen that showed his own people's vessels. Admiral Corex, Zenth continued, his voice carrying across all frequencies. I served under you for 2 years. You know, I am not a liar or a traitor. Ask yourself why the High Command gave you orders to attack without allowing you to communicate with survivors first. There was no immediate response from the Zealothi fleet. Then, suddenly, one of the destroyers broke formation and moved away from the others. Its captain's voice came over the communication system. This is Captain Vorth of the destroyer Swift Strike. Admiral, I request permission to verify Captain Zenth's claims before continuing this attack. You will maintain formation and follow orders, Admiral Corex replied sharply. Sir, with respect, the evidence suggests these humans are rescuers, not attackers. The Starweaver shows damage from internal explosions, not enemy weapons. And Captain Zenth is clearly alive and unharmed. A second ship, one of the cruisers, also moved out of attack position. Admiral, this is Captain Nexus of the Heavy Sword. My crew is also questioning these orders. We came here believing we were avenging fallen comrades, not murdering rescued survivors. Mason felt a spark of hope as he watched more ships breaking away from the attack formation. But Admiral Corex was not giving up so easily. All ships will resume attack positions immediately, Corex ordered. Anyone who disobeys will be court-martialed for treason. The only treason here is yours, Admiral, Captain Vorth replied. Your? Following orders to kill innocent people to cover up the High Command's crimes. The situation was rapidly spinning out of control for the Admiral. 3 of his 6 ships had now refused to continue the attack, and the crews of the remaining vessels were clearly struggling with their orders. On the Valiant's bridge, Lieutenant Commander Jake Peterson monitored the communications between the Asids. Zealothi ships. Captain, it sounds like they're having some kind of mutiny over there. Good, Mason replied. Maybe some of them still remember what honor means. Admiral Corex made his decision. Any ship that refuses to follow orders will be considered hostile. All loyal vessels target the rebels first, then the human ship. The 3 ships still under Corex's control opened fire, but not at the Valiant. Instead, they attacked their own former allies who had broken formation. The space around the nebula erupted in weapons fire as Zealothi fought Zealothi. My God, Dr. Kate Sullivan said from her position on the bridge, where she had come to report on the wounded. They're fighting each other. Captain Zenth's hands clenched into fists as he watched. His people tear themselves apart. This is what the High Command's corruption has led to. Zealothi killing Zealothi to hide their shame. The rebel ships were outnumbered, but fought with determination. Captain Vorth's destroyer used its speed to avoid the heavier weapons of Corex's cruisers, while Captain Nexus coordinated defensive maneuvers with the 3rd rebel vessel. Captain Mason, Vorth's voice came over the communications. We could use some help here. Mason didn't hesitate. Peterson, target the nearest loyal ship. Let's even the odds. The Valiant moved into the battle, its weapons adding to the firepower of the rebel Zealothi vessels. Mason ordered one last use of the quantum enhancement, sending his ship streaking across the battlefield to strike at Admiral Corex's flagship. The human ship's plasma, cannons, and torpedoes hammered the Zealothi cruisers' shields, while Tony Rodriguez pushed the engines beyond their safe limits. The quantum field held together just long enough for the attack, then collapsed in a shower of sparks that lit up the engineering section. Quantum drive is offline, Rodriguez reported. We're back to conventional propulsion only. But the surprise. Attack had done its job. Admiral Corex's flagship was badly damaged, its shields down and several weapon systems destroyed. The Admiral himself was injured when his bridge took a direct hit and his second-in-command took control of the ship. This is Commander Thale, came a new voice from the flagship. Admiral Corex is injured. I'm assuming command, and I'm ordering all ships to cease fire immediately. The battle gradually wound down as the ships stopped shooting at each other. The space around them was littered with debris from damaged vessels. But amazingly, none of the ships had been completely destroyed. "All vessels, this is Captain Mason," the human commander announced. "I'm declaring a temporary ceasefire to allow for medical assistance and damage assessment." Over the next several hours, an unprecedented cooperation began to develop. Human and Zealoty medical teams worked together to treat the wounded from all ships. Dr. Sullivan found herself coordinating treatment for injuries ranging from plasma burns to explosive decompression trauma. "Dr. Drack," she called to the Zealoty medical officer, "I need your help with the crew from the Heavy Sword. They have some injuries I've never seen before." The two doctors worked side by side, sharing knowledge and techniques as they treated patients from both sides of the conflict. The language barrier gradually disappeared as they focused on saving lives rather than politics. In the engineering sections, human and Zealoty technicians collaborated to repair the damaged ships. Engineer Krell found himself working with crews from the rebel vessels, helping them fix systems that had been damaged in the fighting. "Your people are remarkable," Captain Nexus told Mason during a brief meeting aboard the Valiant. "You risked your lives for strangers, then fought beside us against overwhelming odds. I have never seen such courage from an unknown species." "We just did what seemed right," Mason replied. "No one should be abandoned to die in space, regardless of politics." Captain Zenth spent hours talking with the crews of the rebel ships, learning about the growing discontent with the High Command's policies. Many young officers had joined the military to serve their people, only to find themselves carrying out orders that served political interests rather than justice. "The High Command has been hiding their failures for years," Captain Vorth explained. "Failed expeditions, lost colonies, corrupt deals with criminal organizations. They stay in power by controlling information and eliminating anyone who might expose the truth." "Then maybe it's time for some changes," Zenth suggested. 3 days after the battle, an unexpected fleet appeared on their sensors. But this time, it wasn't Zealoty military vessels. Captain Mason received a communication from the approaching ships that filled him with relief. "U.E.'s Valiant, this is Admiral Sarah Blake aboard the U.E.'s Constitution. We received your emergency beacon and came as quickly as possible." The human fleet consisted of 3 cruisers and 2 support vessels, more than enough to protect both the Valiant and their Zealoty allies. Admiral Blake listened with growing amazement as Mason explained the events of the past week. "Captain, you've managed to rescue an alien crew, survive a battle with superior forces, and apparently started a revolution in Zealoty society," Blake said with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. "Command is going to have a very interesting time writing the report on this mission." The aftermath of the crisis moved quickly. The rebel Zealoty ships formally requested asylum with the Human Federation, bringing with them detailed evidence of the High Command's corruption and crimes. Captain Zenth was elected as the leader of the Zealoty rebels, and he immediately began planning for a return to their home systems to share the truth with their people. Admiral Korix and his remaining loyal officers were placed under protective custody. Some were genuinely remorseful about their actions, while others remained defiant. But their ability to harm anyone was over. 6 months later, Captain Mason stood on the observation deck of Earth's primary space station, watching as the first joint human Zealoty exploration fleet prepared to depart. The quantum drive technology, perfected through cooperation between the 2 species, had opened up new possibilities for deep space exploration. "Captain Mason," Captain Zenth approached, now wearing the uniform of the reformed Zealoty government. "The new council has asked me to thank you again for everything you and your crew did. Without your intervention, the corruption in our government might have continued for generations." "You would have done the same for us," Mason replied. "That's what allies do for each other." Dr. Kate Sullivan joined them at the observation window. Her former patient, the critically injured Zealoty engineer, was now fully recovered and working as part of the Joint Exploration Program. The medical exchange program is exceeding all expectations, she reported. Zealoty healing techniques, combined with human medical technology, are producing remarkable results. We're learning so much from each other. Engineer Tony Rodriguez appeared, with a tablet full of technical specifications. Captain, the new ships are ready for their shakedown cruise. The quantum-enhanced engines are twice as efficient as anything we've ever built, and more reliable than our original designs, added Engineer Krell, who had become Rodriguez's closest collaborator. Human safety protocols combined with Zealoty engineering precision make a powerful combination.